My first question would be, in this world where we are going through a major climate transition and running out of spaces to live due to rising sea level, again that's because of the rising temperature, do we really need oil? The major oil based catastrophes can easily be prevented if we simply switch to the renewable resources. But here we are spending chunks of our money on oil and making the oil based corporation richer. And that's not it. We are paying taxes so the government continues to welcome more of those MNCs, generate more revenues from them as they sell their oil and coal based electricity. Because why not? Capitalism. Driving an electric vehicle doesn't make you sustainable. You have to know where your electricity is coming from. On 25th July 2020, bulk carrier ship MV Wakashio ran aground on a coral reef at Rivière de Creole, forgive me for my incorrect pronunciation, in Mauritius. As we know, Mauritius is known for its popular holiday destination because of its gorgeous beaches, volcanic rocks, its fragile ecosystem of mangrove forests, coral atolls, underground coral reefs, seagrass, and historic forts. But in early 2020, the tourism industry, which is a key sector in the Mauritian economy, was hit hard due to the COVID-19 outbreak, hurting the livelihoods of a large part of the local population. And what happened several months later completely devastated the island nation. The Japanese vessel MV Wakashio, transiting too close to Mauritius, crashed into one of its most fragile coral reefs. On August 6th, it began leaking fuel which turned out to be a new type of highly toxic heavy oil. Before the leak was stopped, about 1,000 tons of oil had seeped into the Indian Ocean, severely contaminating Mauritius' shoreline and lagoons in what would become the worst environmental disaster that the country had ever known. Impacts of the oil spill on the marine ecosystem. The oil toxicity is mainly due to the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which shows binding ability to the DNA and protein, low water solubility, lipophilicity, and high persistence. Carcinogenic and long-term chronic impacts have been reported even when these compounds are exposed at low levels to marine organisms. The oil spill in Mauritius has affected sensitive ecosystems such as mangroves. The consequences for the marine life could be disastrous as mangroves are the nursery of the marine environment. Mangrove communities are particularly susceptible to damage from large oil spills when oil is released into the coastal waters and washed ashore. It deposits on sediments that cover the highly sensitive fine feeding roots of the mangrove trees. Once deposited, oil adheres and rarely moves, having adsorbed to the oleophilic surfaces of plants. Oil coats the breathing surfaces of mangrove roots, stems, seedlings, and surrounding sediments, as well as fauna present in burrows and root hollows. When smothered with oil, shorter plants and animals die mostly within days. Together with mangroves, filter feeders such as corals and crustaceans and mollusks are of particular concern. Crabs are mostly exposed to oil toxicity through coating on surfaces and body suffocating, feeding on oil polluted sediments which causes ensnaring and blockage of the gills and low feeding. Heavy coating of the oil on the crab's body has detrimental impacts such as impaired physiology and behavior, interfering ecosystem roles and transferring to the crab predators, that is, bioaccumulation. The acute and chronic effects and the injuries of oil pollution on coral species, both on adult colonies and larvae, has been analyzed in previous field and experimental studies. These studies have confirmed various lethal and sublethal physiological, behavioral, and ecological responses of scleractinians, including impaired reproduction and fecundity, low larval recruitment and survivorship, decreased growth, increased tissue damage, and bleaching. Marine mammals are mostly exposed to the oil on the sea surface and shoreline. Dolphins and whales, as well as sea turtles, are mostly affected by oil spills since they breathe at the surface and ingest oil after an oil spill, resulting in respiratory irritation, inflammation, emphysema, gastrointestinal inflammation, ulcer, bleeding, diarrhea, and may cause damage to organs. The mitigation measures. We have to have an overview of how impactful the damage was. Measurements in population and community level of the biota globally and locally are taken to proceed with the mitigation process, since the data will show us how much damage it can cause in future. In addition, at the organism level, since the earliest steps of an individual's response to any environmental stress occur at the cellular level, a diagnostic tool is the analysis of expression of cellular and molecular biomarkers such as stress proteins, enzymes, and gene expressions that reflect changes in the cellular structural integrity as well as functional cellular pathways and performance. Hierarchically, the organism's physiology is the nexus between the organism and the stressor, playing a paramount role in determining their tolerance and resilience to stressors. The efforts to remove the oil should aim for the recovery of a healthy biological community. According to the International Tankers Owners Pollution Federation, the cleanup operation may be delivered following a two-stage process. Firstly, the prompt removal of the gross contamination, and after that, targeted activities to limit the pollution damage and help the natural healing process. Moreover, it should always be taken into account that nature plays a very large part in the cleaning process and that improper cleanup operation may cause additional damage beyond that caused by the oil spill, such as an excessive use of hot water and chemicals to reach a fast and unrealistic last drop removal. The removal of free oil from mangrove stand using low pressure, high volume of water has already been reported in order to mitigate long-term damage. The use of heavy vehicles and excessive manpower should be monitored in order to avoid damages to the rootstock by trampling. In addition, the chemical and physical characteristics of the oil should be also taken into account, as light refined oils such as diesel are less persistent but more toxic and should be removed firstly from the sensitive sites. On the contrary, high viscosity oil can stick and persist for a longer time, with the possibility that the recovery of the original ecological features of the habitat and ecosystems are reached even without a visible cleanliness of the area. What can we conclude from this? The recent research advancement, the scientific community has gained knowledge about the impacts of oil spills on marine ecosystem and developed technologies that may limit the ecological damage in short term and speed up natural self-healing processes in the long term. However, the large differences in the time scale of the events as well as the irreversibility of a part of the pollution process is once again under our eyes. The spill was spread in a few weeks after the vessel ground. The assessments of the impacts on the marine fauna and the action to restore the affected ecosystem are still in progress and will most probably continue for years.